Welcome to the Diplomats, a podcast on diplomacy. I'm Go Horns Go. Humble the Heap. My normal partner is not with me today, but we have a very special guest. It's like those old episodes of Blossom, a very special episode of Blossom, because today we have Nexus's own schizophrenic Flint/Conk greatest player by Nexus rankings in the history of Nexus. Flint, Conk, what do you prefer?
Wow. Conk is great. Either is fine. I want to thank you for having me on and also say I am making my podcast debut today of any kind. Never done a podcast. This is the maiden voyage. A little bit nervous, but excited to do it. And I had no idea of all the things I'd be sort of making my podcast debut about. It would be about a terrible diplomacy game in which I was destroyed. So thank you for that.
Well, you're most welcome. And this is, think of this as humble beginnings. Everyone's got to, learn to crawl before they can walk on the podcast world.
Excellent. Well,
all right.
Looking forward to whatever you got to send me today.
All right. Let's go with a little background first. I said in the first podcast for season 4 that in terms of diplomacy, I love your style. I think I called you a model who's got long legs and brains, to take the line from Bull Durham. So you tell me, how did you get into diplomacy? What attracts you to the game? And how are you so damn good?
Well, thank you. Kind words for sure. Not totally fair, though. I am incredibly attractive in real life, and I do have long legs. How did I get into diplomacy? I had a catastrophic injury about 10 years ago. I broke both my wrists and my cheekbone and my orbital bone in my face, and was out of commission of sort of doing the things I normally do, like open doors and play ping pong and use a stapler, for about 5 months. And so I had a lot of downtime. My brother had played a little bit of diplomacy in person, and he kind of introduced me to it as sort of a way to get through the pain. And so I played a lot online back then. That was before a lot of the current sites are up. Really enjoyed it, but then started working and put it aside for maybe 5 years, and then started back up online when I sort of got the itch maybe 5 years ago.
Well, I know there's a problem, because for me, diplomacy is full of pain. If this was used as a pain reliever, that speaks to how well you've done. But what attracts you to the game? What do you like about it?
Yeah, I think it's a great game. It's all about people. I am much more attracted to kind of the communication aspect of it than the tactical side, though I enjoy both. But I just, it's start up a game. I play a lot of anonymous games, so it's with strangers, or at least they start out as strangers. And you have 6 people who they're a captive audience. They can't help but write back. They kind of have to be your pen pal no matter what you send them. And you have, basically, several game years to convince them to make you the winner. And I think that's so much of what it is. To me, it's not so much a tactical game as it's getting to know people. It's getting people on your side. It's making arguments why they should be moving their pieces away from you and towards somebody else. So I like that interpersonal aspect of it.
All right. So my understanding is not only have you had success online, but you've dipped your toe in the water of face-to-face diplomacy with some excellent results. Why don't you give our listeners, most of whom I would assume are online players, kind of like myself, a little nervous to go to face-to-face, thinking that, hey, if I'm exposed online anonymously, who cares? But in person, it's a whole different thing. So tell us about your experience and whether online players should give face-to-face a try.
Sure. So I consider my face-to-face experience to be my greatest diplomacy success. not so much for the tournament itself, but for convincing my wife that I ought to go to DC for a weekend, leave her at home with the kids, so I can go to a board game convention, which was a very tough sell. I still don't know how I was able to do it, but it's just like I said, it's sort of that interpersonal connection. Talk to someone, explain, make a persuasive argument, and hope it works out. So in this case, it did. I went to World DipCon in Washington, D.C., I guess a couple of years now ago, and I had a blast. It was the first time I had played face-to-face diplomacy. It was the first time I had really interacted with anybody else in person who plays the game, except for my brother, who had only played a little bit. And I found everybody incredibly welcoming. I made a lot of friends. I'm still in touch, even though I've only been to really the one tournament. I'm still in touch with a lot of those folks. And the game is very different. It's online. I think the biggest difference is online. You have all these simultaneous conversations going on, and you can sort of toss a lot of irons in the fire and work on them at the same time. In person, you have this sort of sequence of conversations, and everything changes in between them, and you're on a time limit, and you sort of have to scramble to put it all together. So it's a different game. It's very intense, but it's a lot of fun. Folks were very welcoming, and I think a lot of people who know the game online are able to have success in person. The basics are still the same, and it was just a great experience.
So let's go to your reputation on Nexus, and I want to show you what Village Idiot, who was in the season 2 finals with you and with me, said about you and your style of play, and have you respond. Do you see it on the screen there?
I see it. Yes, the true authority, Village Idiot.
The true authority. I've played with you several times. I've learned how you play, and I saw a lot of truth in the sense that you do want to make it a fun experience for other players. Look, just in the conversation, you can tell that you have an okay sense of humor. You work on it. You're trying, but you bring a lot of that to the game. I mean, you're no Dave Chappelle or anything.
Yeah, so I'm trying to read Village Idiot's prose here and digest it and then respond. Gosh, he says I can see through tricks, give him a fun experience. I mean, I don't want to agree to anything Village Idiot says, so let me just talk about my style generally. I definitely like to have fun. I definitely like to kind of establish a rapport, both with enemies and friends alike. I am much more fun to play with, and I enjoy a lot more when I'm kind of in the game, succeeding, and I have options, none of which were true at any point in this Nexus final. Really, this one or the last one, to be completely frank. But, generally, I try to message everybody a lot. I'm probably one of the more active players. I try to have fun with it. It wouldn't be completely unusual if I were to write a poem or a song or, a stupid joke. And some of that's strategic. Some of it's because the game often, especially a finals board, ends with everybody choosing who they want to win out of a few kind of qualifiers. But also it's because I'm, here to have fun, and I want to build those relationships and just enjoy myself.
Who has better press, me or you? Who's funnier?
You're definitely funnier. Honestly, I feel like we're best friends, and we've, played about 3 games together. I think every time we've got along well. I've usually stabbed you. Maybe I've always stabbed you, but we're always having a good time.
You stabbed me twice. I will say, in my semi-defense, I did throw one game to you to get you into the season 2 finals, which apparently almost sunk my chances of making the finals, as there was some discussion as to whether or not I should have done that. Are you at least grateful for that?
Like I said, I consider you a friend, even though we've never met in person. This is the first time we've actually chatted. So I think that you should continue to throw games to me early and often.
All right. Well, I don't even think I need to try. It seems to always work out. Now, I think I think it's fair to say, and this is going to be the difference between a winner like yourself and me, an average player, is you, Humble, Village Idiot, other players, maybe our winner here. My assumption is you go into every game with the idea, A, I'm trying to solo, and how do I do that? Whereas I, a natural pessimist, go in thinking 1, survival, 2, hang on, 3, then take my shot. Are you always looking for that solo right away?
Well, I am thinking about how I could achieve that. And I'll say it's a little different in this finals board. It's a game that ends in 1910, where whoever has the most dots in the end is going to win. So I really at no point, even if I had gotten off to a good start, I wouldn't have been thinking solo. I would have been thinking how to top the board. But yeah, I do definitely make moves with that in mind. And even in this game, I struggled out of the gate, and there were times I could have been more defensive and a little more cautious, but I definitely looked at the board in terms of, well, okay, if this guy's not with me, I can't win anyway, so I might as well put my trust in it and hope, because I don't care about survival in a game like this. Definitely my sort of decision tree was about, how do I top the board? And I'm not going to sacrifice a chance to top the board to ensure that I survive, that kind of thing.
So in season 4 finals, you draw Italy. You drew Italy in season 2, which you didn't have a great season 2 finals. I'm wondering, when you drew Italy again, what were you thinking? What do you think of Italy generally in diplomacy? Not as a country. Who doesn't love Italy as a country? But Italy, the diplomacy country.
I love Italy as a country. I honeymooned in Italy. It's gorgeous. I don't want to ever draw Italy again, and I wasn't excited to draw it here, just because I have trouble. I have less options as Italy, and especially in this final and the final before, my neighbor Austria insisted upon what all the kids are calling a southern hedgehog, which includes a move from Trieste to Venice. And I found in this game and the one before it, it just really limits my options. And so I know a lot of people have success with Italy, and they're certainly better diplomats than me that would have made lemonade out of it. But I definitely wasn't excited.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, tell me how the Iosers or losers, as Superstition called them. He played Germany in season 2. I found him to be a very stubborn individual. In fact, he won't do an interview. He's so stubborn with me. And now you draw him as Austria. Now that I know that Iosers was Austria, he is sort of dead set on his plan. So he told you he was doing a Southern Hedgehog, and I assume you did everything you could to try and talk him out of it, and no go.
That's right. We had a long conversation. I mean, we I don't know how many messages, but I think dozens before the first move. And I did everything I could to get him to change his plan. And I couldn't do it. So once it was clear that had failed, I was planning to go west, and I sort of had a conversation with him in real time where I sort of made that choice, and couldn't convince him to keep my plan or keep our kind of discussion secret, such that I could sell it to France as a move to Piedmont and Venice to open, and then I would try to sell to France that I was planning on actually attacking Austria when in fact I was going west. But Iosers would not agree to keep the fact that he was opening to Venice, or to say that that was a surprise, such that I could possibly sell that opening as anti-Austrian when in fact it was anti-France. I don't know if that was clear, but
So
bottom
not
line,
only is he moving to Venice, he won't even try and give cover. That's not good for AI cooperation early to make some. So it seems like you couldn't even agree to try and deceive others.
Right. So those were kind of my initial two plans, and neither one succeeded. And that's, I'm sure it's some stubbornness on his part. I'm sure it's some failure in diplomacy on my part. I mean, I think probably your biggest job as Italy in the first year is to convince Austria to work with you, and that you're not going to stab him, and that you're a good ally. And I definitely did not succeed in that.
Okay, so you must have I mean, I know you well enough that you communicated with a lot of other players. Why don't you give us initial impressions? I assume you tried to work with Russia, Turkey, anybody, maybe not Turkey, but certainly Russia, France. Tell me how initial negotiations went.
Yeah, I reached out to everybody. I had friendly conversations with everybody. Notable conversations. Russia and I had a long talk about a wintergreen. I think I've written a fair amount about it on Nexus or Discord and elsewhere, that I'm fond of that alliance. And so we definitely discussed that and agreed to it. Had a great conversation with France about a friendly DMZ between our fine countries to our mutual benefit, which obviously didn't come to pass.
I think Pez told me that you had agreed, to DMZ, Piedmont, and Gulf of Leon. So Pez was like, I didn't break my word. I didn't move to Piedmont. And I didn't, and I guess he couldn't have moved to Gulf of Leon, but, he definitely broke his word the next time around. But he said here, in spring 1901, when you saw these moves, what was your initial instinct with France?
Well, let me respond to that. I mean, that to me sounds like a distinction without a difference. I didn't consider France's his spring 1901 move to be hostile. I don't think it was. It was pretty neutral. But certainly his fall move was an overt act of war on the humble and fine people of Italy. So
I've got it right there. How many times in all your years of diplomacy have you seen France make this move in fall 1901?
The answer to your question, I'd never seen that move before. It was obviously hostile. He obviously felt he had complete security from his Western neighbors and was coming at me full force. And I still had a shot at that point, but it was about the worst thing that could have happened to open the game. I mean, Austria, Germany are not going to attack Italy to start. Usually you can count on France not attacking to start, but boy, that move to Western Mediterranean was aggressive, and it definitely made the game difficult from that point on.
Meanwhile, you secure Greece, which is always an issue between Italy and Austria. You got Turkish support to go to Greece. Tell me the thinking of why you wanted to prioritize Greece over Tunis, and how that came to pass that you got Turkish cooperation, which, Italy and Turkey are natural enemies for obvious reasons.
Sure. I asked Austria to support me there first. I felt confident that Turkey would do it anyway, but I really wanted to gauge how much trust Austria had in me. And so that's why I asked him, and he declined. He was also adamant that I not move Rome to Venice, which, I told him explicitly I was going to do that because I didn't want to leave myself open to attack. But by that point, it was just quite clear that Austria didn't trust me. And so I was very happy to build something with Turkey. I think it was a pretty simple choice for Turkey to do it. There was an easy move for Austria to deny Turkey 2 builds, and I think he felt the writing was on the wall there. And so I asked him for support to Greece, and he accepted. I think it made sense for him to do that. Why did I prefer to go there over Tunis? I felt like Greece was more difficult to acquire, notwithstanding France's aggression.
Well, you didn't know that move was going to happen by France. In hindsight, you didn't know that.
Well,
you didn't know that.
That's right. So I could have moved to Tunis instead. I like Greece a little better because it gave me, I thought, some interesting diplomatic options. I thought once I was there, Austria was probably going to have to, consider me as an ally a little more because I've got an asset there that can be useful to him. And I thought the same thing with both Turkey and Russia. So I found it to be a useful diplomatic piece to, have an asset that could be used by any of the three Eastern powers. And I thought it would help me win a friend over there.
So now you're in a bit of a pickle. You don't have great relations with Austria. You said you were moving to Venice. You did. You moved to Greece. You didn't get support from Austria, but Austria's attacking Turkey. Turkey's helping you. If you got France on the west, I guess there's a bit of a decision here. Do I stick with maybe working against Austria, or do I try and defend this horrible invasion by France? I know you well enough to know that you talked to France and probably tried to talk France out of it, but tell me what you're doing and tell me what you're thinking and your logic behind it.
Sure. Okay, so this gets back to kind of goals for the game and what I'm trying to accomplish. I certainly could have, I could have convoyed back to Tunis in 1902. That would have been the only way to secure it, right? Otherwise, I've got a guessing game between covering Tunis and trying to put myself in position to retake it. So the only way I could secure Tunis would be to convoy Greece to Tunis while moving a fleet out to Tyrrhenian Sea. But yeah, my goal is to top the board. And if I'm sending 3 units to go fight for one center and kind of building up forces along a large border with France, and I have no presence in the east, there's no way I'm going to top that board, or at least it's very unlikely. So rather than doing that, I am spending hours and hours of my life sending press to England and Germany, trying to get some breakthrough with them to stab France. And I am focused on the east with the idea that, okay, if France doesn't get stabbed and keeps coming, I have no chance anyway. So I'd rather put that side in jeopardy and try to expand in hopes that somebody helps me out from behind France and gets him to turn around.
You get a little help from Germany with the move into Burgundy. Of course, later on, he withdraws that army to Munich. But did you have any influence on that move?
I didn't feel I had much influence on Germany at all throughout the entire game. As just one example of that, in fall of 2001, Germany was trying to persuade me to take Greece with my fleet, which was just beyond crazy to me. Of course, right. That's the same move that France moves to Western Mediterranean, which I have no doubt Germany knew about. So, from there on, I felt like Germany was in France's pocket and was not a friend. So I'm sure I do remember talking to Germany and encouraging him to make a move like that, but I don't think I had much influence. I may have had some influence on England moving in a little bit later. I certainly worked that angle very hard, but I don't think I was able to succeed much with Germany, even though he did make that move, which didn't turn out to be an attack.
My understanding, just to take a tangent here, is that you and I prefer the backstabber format. I do because I'm on a Mac and I don't think I can play WebDip or whatever these other sites are. And so we seem to run into each other a lot. But had you run into a lot of these players before, and did you have a guess as to who anybody was early on in the game?
I didn't know who anybody was. I'm terrible at identifying other folks, and I have a reputation, at least, for being easy to identify by everybody else.
You're easy to identify.
I was playing
I can assure you.
Honestly, sometimes I try very hard to come up with new phrases and change up punctuation and miscapitalize letters to try to conceal myself, but I obviously am terrible at that. But the answer is I didn't know who anybody was.
You can cut your press by 90%, and that might obscure it. But you and I both have extremely long press, so I'm pretty sure anytime you get something over 1,500 words, it's from one of us.
Yeah, it's funny because I especially in these games that's anonymous, and I feel like there might be some advantage in staying secret. I actively do that in the first, couple of seasons. I try to conceal it, but it never works. And then I just give up and write everybody a novel. It's a real problem.
Okay. So just on another side tangent, my favorite thing is the very first game we played, I copied and I played England and I copied, you were playing Germany. I copied and pasted the exact same press to France and Germany without realizing that I failed to identify you as Germany as opposed to France, and you called me out in the most hilarious way. I don't know if you remember that, but that stuck on my mind, my typographical failure. This is why we should never copy and paste.
See, I love that move on your part because there's definitely an advantage in other folks on the board thinking that you're not thoughtful and not particularly invested in the game. So when you call Germany France, it can create some expectations that can help you down the road. So I know what you're up to. I could see you laying the foundation for the surprise attack later on.
Yeah, correct. Yes, the surprise attack that left me feeble. All right, let's go back to spring 1902 here. Let's criticize you for a bit because you got a lot of critique in real time from me. Of course, you must have felt a little disheartened that I kept thinking that you were Russia and not Italy if you listened to the podcast, because I was brutal about this move to Serbia, as was Umbel. Who I think either gave Turkey the best move of Turkish season. He got the Umbel Award for sneaking you up there to later stab you. Why not save Greece? Why go to Serbia, isolate yourself, and help Turkey maybe get stronger? I understand kind of what you're saying about there's nothing I could do about France. Screw it. But here, this move to Serbia demands an explanation.
Sure. I still think it was the right move, frankly. I don't think I had a better move. And I am offended that you credit Turkey for the move because I definitely came up with it, insisted upon it. So
you insisted on this move.
Stick to my guns. You should give me the worst move of the tournament for this one, rather than giving Turkey the best move, because he was just a passenger on the train on this one. So why did I want to do that? Well, again, it's my relationships with Turkey, Russia, and Austria. I did not feel comfortable. I mean, Austria was, I think he offered me support and actually entered it to Bulgaria on that move. I could have accepted that and hurt Turkey. But I didn't see much of a future with Austria, and I didn't think we were going to be able to go any further into Turkey because his fleet was still, didn't bring it out to the Mediterranean. So I went to Serbia thinking my next move was going to be glorious. I felt like I had good relationships with both Russia and Turkey. I felt like England was going to come down and stab France, and he was going to have to turn around. And I was essentially going to get to take my pick of allies in the East. Now, that didn't work out because Turkey's stab in Serbia in the fall cost me 2 units. It cost me Serbia because he took it, and it cost me Trieste because Serbia was supporting Venice to Trieste. So I think I had an interesting setup there. If Turkey hadn't stabbed me, I would have gone up to 5. Austria would have been out of the game, and I would have had what I thought was strong allies in both Turkey and Russia, and I was doing my darndest to start a war between the two of them, which did come about. Basically, I went into 1902 thinking, for me to have any chance, I've got to make England and France go to war, and I've got to make Turkey and Russia go to war. And I succeeded in both, and yet got completely wiped off the map. So I had ideas of how this might result in everybody speaking Italian, but I just couldn't hold on to my Turkish ally for the turn I needed him most. And then in the aftermath, I got stabbed by Russia. So I think my failure was in trying to hold on to those allies, that I just didn't persuade them that keeping me around was the right thing to do. I don't think it was a tactical mistake, or at least it's not one that I wouldn't make again over and over in moving to Serbia there, just based on the relationships.
So here we have fall 1902, and you're not stabbed yet. I think that obviously by Turkey that comes later, but you clearly traded Serbia for Greece. But I talked to France. His podcast will be later, but France prioritized Tyrrhenian Sea over Tunis, which was, I think, of a help to you. But it must have been mystifying, the Burgundy move, and not mystifying, but disappointing that France, who supports England into Belgium, so now you're not getting England making war with Belgium, they're making love, and you're getting getting Germany to retreat from a clear one center pickup on Paris.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely not the way I wanted that to go down. And, I was spending a lot of ink trying to reach a different result out there. I don't think, it was in either Germany or England's interest to see France start to pick up, Tunis and Italian dots. And I thought, there was a clear opening for them to make some gains there. I got out diplomed by France, who clearly spent a lot of effort and did a good job making those players feel like they were better with him strong in the game. So it was disappointing, and it's definitely a good example of where I failed in the game. My approach towards the French attack was, rather than spend units to try to set up a wall, was to get somebody to come in the back door, and wasn't able to do it in time. And even when I did, France kept coming. So definitely makes it tough as Italy when you've got France sending all those blue units to sunshine of the Mediterranean Sea.
Well, that's difficult. Plus, you're actually aiding Russia here against your closest neighbor, Austria. This is the first. Well, I guess you took Serbia, so this is another explicit move against Austria. So, two neighbors hate you at this point.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, I don't know if France hates me so much as sees me as an easy mark. Or I mean, I hadn't done anything anti-French. I had sent him nothing but kind words and promises, and but he was clearly coming and saw me as an appetizer.
Well, did
Yeah,
that
I mean,
stop
I don't
you
think.
when in the last qualifying game? I will point out I was Italy and you were France. That didn't seem to stop you as much as we got along. I say a lot of kind words, and you still grab centers off me.
Well, that's true. Though I think I sent one friendly unit down there, and it's a different game. I don't want to digress into that too much. But
Precedent.
as
It's
far
not
as
precedent. We're talking about this game.
I mean, hey, if you'd like to talk about a game that I actually survived and ended up with a few centers, I'm happy to completely change the subject. As far as this one goes, I mean, I had already attacked Serbia, so Austria didn't think too fondly of me already. So the support for Russia to Budapest, I think, only helped me because I'm trying to knock Austria out of the game here on a finals board. There's a lot of twists and turns, and there's a lot of kind of balance of power shifts. And so if you can knock out a neighbor, then that sets you up really well long term, because when the board shifts to try to knock down the leader, you've just got less competition surrounding you. So I am definitely going all out to try to knock out Austria here. That said, the move from Venice to Tuscany was unfortunate. That obviously didn't help me. I was totally out of position, but I felt like I had to, because the French attack was so aggressive, and had he convoyed to Tuscany, I'm out at that point. I mean, that would have been a killer. So it was a
Well, let me ask you,
misguess.
what was your conversation like with Germany? How is Germany? I mean, you need France and Germany. I mean, it's an amazing. I mean, France won, and I'm not looking for you to be critical of people. I just want your objective analysis. France gave up position. France gave up all the inherent advantages that France has to go after you, and Germany did not take advantage of that. And you know, obviously Germany has a little problem with Russia here, not a huge one, and a little problem with England. But were you surprised that Germany didn't take those wide open dots? If you were Germany, and I know from experience how well you play Germany, how would you have approached France's moves?
Sure. So first, was I surprised? Absolutely. I think most people on the board were surprised that he didn't take Paris there. In terms of
or
how
defend Belgium, which he could have done.
No, you're right. It was a baffling move, and it as Italy, it definitely hurt me because I was expecting France to lose that dot. In terms of kind of critiquing the play, I can see it. I could see it both ways. He had a alliance that he felt like he could count on, and he could for quite a while. I mean, I was paying less attention as as the game got later, but it was probably 1908, maybe 1909 when that alliance. I think it was 1909 when it fell apart. So it's hard to fault someone for not stabbing an ally for one dot in an alliance that lasted, 6 or 7 years beyond this. And there's a huge benefit as Germany and France if you have an alliance that's that trusting. But I think, the problem I see with it is the way the board is shaping up. France is going to be picking up southern centers here pretty quickly, and you're going to have to turn towards Russia. He's got all those armies on the board, not a lot of fleets. So he's really got to turn on Russia if he's allied with France. And then he's got units that are going to be put down on the board behind him. So kind of the way the board is shaping up isn't particularly good for him, even with that strong alliance. So I think all things equal, if I'm Germany there, I take Paris. I don't want France to keep placing units behind me. But I can see, when you have a great alliance on a board like this full of sharks, I can see why you stick with it. And you're not doing it in a vacuum. You're doing it after reading press from your ally, France, and whatever France was saying here was the right thing because it got the job done.
Well, what France said is, he told me, you've got to do this because right now England hates you and Russia hates you. Do you want me to hate you? And it's 3-on-1, buddy. If you do this, if you don't pull back, and he credits that threat to getting Germany to move back, which makes a lot of sense if you're France to say that. Let's hear another tangent I want to go on just for briefly is time zones. This is a game with international players. A player from Italy won, but we had players from 2 from Italy, 1 from, I think, Great Britain, and then all across the United States. Without giving away your identity, you're in the Western time zone of the United States, which is beautiful weather, but your time zone to me is crazy. Did you find it difficult in terms of being able to communicate with folks in real time? Because I know how critical that is to your game. I happen to be a night owl, so you and I can talk at all times, but did you find that a struggle?
I don't think so. In this game, everybody was pretty active and committed. So it wouldn't be unusual to converse with most of these folks. I mean, almost any time. I mean, I'd say people were tuned in more often during the day than they weren't. I mean, I know folks have to sleep, but I didn't find that a very big struggle, and I didn't find it useful in identifying folks to kind of give you an idea that I wasn't waiting for a European to kind of wake up very often. So I found folks are pretty active and responsive. The one time it did play a factor is the first few resolutions were, I think, at 6 a.m. my time, which was just killer. And it's so often true that you've got a few plans in the air and you need someone to confirm, and then you have to talk to somebody else once somebody else confirms. And so that last hour and a half before the deadline is pretty critical. So I think I missed a couple of them, and others I sacrificed my health to be awake. And that definitely probably put me in a worse mood, which had a detrimental effect on my press, or at least it didn't make for a very fun morning, especially because I keep waking up at 5 a.m. to see the resolution, and then every resolution goes against me and makes the game look worse. So
good morning.
That's my biggest complaint. Exactly.
Well, I started my own law firm for no other reason than I felt like I didn't have to show up super early to work to impress somebody. There's no way, even on a finals board, I could wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. to press with anybody. I mean, I couldn't do it. All right, so you build in Venice here in winter of 2002 as opposed to building a fleet. This is, I assume, just I'm anti-Austria. France take Tunis. I don't care. I've got my plan. Am I guessing it right or wrong?
Oh, let's see. Okay, so this is the season when England builds in Liverpool. So that's a move I knew about. Yeah, I mean, that's one that I probably wrote 5,000 words about why England should do that. Don't know if it had an effect, but he told me he was going to do that, and then he told me he was going to move on France.
He did say, clearly, I'm if you're disappointed in what I described your move into Serbia, I'm disappointed you haven't listened to my podcast, Conk, because I spend a lot of time on them and I try to be diligent. But Superstition said that he essentially did that based on pressuring from you and Russia.
Oh, good. Well, look, I was a diligent listener to your podcast right up until I was getting completely destroyed on the board and didn't want to spend another minute hearing people talk about the little green dots, which there were few and they weren't doing anything productive. So I'm a fair weather fan. I'm sorry to say, but
That's
so
all right.
I knew that.
Well, we'll see the listeners for this one. We'll see how many people care about you. I care about you, but let's see. Go ahead. You build the army.
Okay, so the answer is I knew that attack was coming, and I figured France was going to have to pull back. In the end, he didn't pull back, which I just didn't think he was going to be able to do that. England was pretty strong here and was going to commit pretty strongly against France. But what I didn't foresee England going anti-Russia at the same time. And I just
there it is. Spring 1903. It's a killer. He doesn't accept the Russian offer into Denmark. Instead, he goes all in against France. I'm sorry, against Russia. Kind of a move against France, but gotta just kill you.
No, it's definitely anti-French, and I was excited about that. But I didn't realize he was going to attack Russia at the same time, which really limited his options against France. And obviously Germany helps France here too. So I thought those little light blue units were going to turn around with their tail between their legs and give me some space in the south. I thought I was likely to be able to recapture Tunis with a single fleet. That's why I'm focused on kind of strengthening my position in the north. But not only did the English attack fail, but this move by Turkey into Serbia was really a tough move for me because it cost me two centers and set me way back.
Well, it's only the spring. Russia said that while it wasn't planned, they were still trying to convince you, hey, we'll just get you into Trieste.
So in the fall, you mean?
Yes, because this is a spring move.
Right. So I remember the fall pretty clearly here too. So I'll tell you, my plan in the spring was to have Turkey attack Russia. And then I was going to likely join Russia against Turkey. And I was going to have this glorious turn with about, 10 centers afterwards. It looked so beautiful in my head, but obviously none of it came to pass. So that'll just give you an idea of my own arrogance and foolishness. But yeah, come fall.
Instead, here we go. By the way, in the fall, Russia says you're begging him to tap Vienna so you can take Trieste. Russia stated in his AAR, which apparently you didn't listen to in the podcast, again, disappointing, that this was his biggest mistake of the game, that he should have put you into Trieste, and he should have finished Vienna.
I think that's right, that it was a mistake. And I did push him hard on it. I probably pushed him too hard. What happened here, he had family commitments until like the last half hour of the phase. And I was just twiddling my thumbs for 23 and a half hours, waiting for my big talk with Russia. And so I probably came on too strong in the 30 minutes of intensity that I had before the phase. But in fact, Russia did tell me he was going to tap Vienna. I insisted that he stab Turkey and tap Vienna, or else I was going to basically try to grow Turkey bigger. He did stab Turkey, but he didn't tap Vienna. If he had, Austria is going to be out of the game real quick, and I think I would have had a real chance to, I might have been able to scoop up some of the dots that Austria ended up taking in the middle of the game. And I think from his perspective, you know, a viable and growing Austria is going to compete with Russia for dots a lot more than a viable and growing Italy. So I do think he would have had some real advantages to tapping that for me and basically knocking Austria out of the game. It's also probably good for him to see Italy grow a little bit because that's going to probably cost centers from France and Turkey, who he's competing with. So I do think, obviously he did very well and could have won anyway, but I wish he would have tapped Vienna. Obviously, it would have been better for me, but I think at the time it might have been better for him too. He obviously landed on his feet and did just fine.
So, okay. I'm your biggest fanboy. All right. When you look in the dictionary of Conk's biggest fan, it's Go Horns Go. Sorry, Humble.
Absolutely.
I just love playing with you, even though I know it's going to happen. It's
Humble,
sort of like I'm Lucy. Well, go ahead, and then I'll get to my story.
Too. I think Humble is a big fan too. I think he's more closeted and he's nervous about it, but I think the love is there. You are so explicit about it, and in a way that I think is joyous and fun. So go on.
Well, I'll keep complimenting you, except where I'm about to critique you. So you can just turn to around the 22nd or 23rd minute mark of my interview with Max Fax, who's a wonderful human, by the way, who played Russia. Just loved the conversation with him. Didn't know anything about him. He's great. He tells me two things. He goes, I knew I had to move against Turkey because I didn't want Turkey to get to 6. I was so concerned at Turkey at 6 is unstoppable. And so that's his number one concern. But his second concern was he's like, Italy. And this isn't the only comment. I've published Superstition. I've published Italy. And I've talked to Pez, and they all say the same thing about you, which is, but particularly Russia here, he goes, Italy, particularly this move, bombarded me with press. The press was overwhelming, and it's almost like the guy who's not getting the girl, who decides just to double down on stalking the person, as opposed to just like playing it a little chill. And do you think your style, which is so well suited for qualifiers where you run into idiots like me, in a finals game, it really seemed to turn at least definitely Russia. I don't think there's anything you can do with France, but do you think it may have turned people off a bit?
Yes, the answer is yes. And I don't know if it's a difference between a finals board and a qualifier. Maybe I'm just telling myself that because I don't want to be destined for a lifetime of disappointing finals board podcasts. But in this game, for sure, and especially right around 1903, I had my back against the wall. I'm a wounded animal. I am biting and scratching. I am sending, dozens too many messages in all directions. And I don't think I'm coming across very well. I don't think I'm.
You are like the guy. You are like the guy trying to get the girl. Like, what's wrong with me?
No,
I love you. I don't understand why you don't love me.
And I'm going into this sort of deep interpersonal soul-searching mode that is not fun for anybody to witness. So yeah, I think I was too intense. I think in particular, my communications with Russia before he didn't tap Vienna, which was in this concentrated half hour, like I said, I don't think I played the turn very well. I don't think I sent out I think the press I sent was too needy and too. I mean, I was basically insisting I was going to throw the game if nobody did what I wanted, which no, I just felt like I was in a position up against the wall, and there were certain things that I needed to happen to stay viable. And I think I probably pushed too hard. That said, I mean, I was in a tough position, and had I played it a little more casually, I don't know if I would have had a different result. So, I mean, I think my problem here.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I got down early, and I had this big light blue wave tsunami headed for my shores in the south, you know, coming from France, which I never really expected. And I think it put me into sort of this desperation mode that didn't reflect well in my press. So yeah, I think it was a problem. And if I had to do it again, I would try to tone that down. I don't know if I would be able to, because these were desperate, you know, sad, emotional times. Go Horns, go! What can I say?
So I'm gonna liken you to my sister a bit. I'm an ugly man. The fact that I got any girl to date me, let alone marry me, is a miracle. Okay, it's like coming back from a one center Italy. That's how lucky I was. But my sister, she got all the attractive genes. Okay, and her entire life.
Yeah, and I bet her.
No man ever rejected my sister. If my sister was interested in a man, that was never going to be a problem. And spent a lot of her life trading up men until it didn't happen. And and she never got over that when she finally got rejected in her life by a man. And I'm thinking that's what may have happened here, because what Russia told me is, even though he didn't tap Vienna, even though he didn't help you, he stabbed Turkey, and eventually Russia gets into a little bit of a desperate spot. As you know, he wanted to work with you, but you kept coming back to the failure to tap Vienna, and he said in your mind he didn't think you could get over that, and that's how you sort of turned to be Turkey's buddy. Comment.
Yeah, I think that's sure. So, you know, he and I exchanged a lot of press after he didn't tap Vienna. And during most of that time, I didn't have any realistic chance to get back into the game or win the game. So for me at that point, you know, he probably invited me to throw him the game about, you know, 11 or 12 times, beginning right after that move, thinking that, you know, I didn't have much of a shot and I might as well help him out. And I wasn't interested in that. And by the end, I was actively trying to help someone else beat Russia. And even though France opened to my detriment and was probably the biggest reason other than me that caused my game to go so poorly, I didn't really have any preference between France and Russia in the end. And I was trying to prop up Turkey as best I could. So kind of why did I do that? First, I probably had the most trust in Russia early, and I was, you know, you can't see a lot of it with the moves on the board, but it's not just the support I gave him to Budapest. I really spent a lot of time diplomatically serving his interests, spent a lot of time with England, helping some of the sort of plans that Russia had in the north, and I was in his corner for much of the game. And that Vienna move was really critical to me. And we had a very quick exchange on it, but he told me he was going to tap it, which would have put me at 4 and kind of kept me alive. And then he didn't. So, you know, as I'm kind of trying to assess, okay, what am I going to do with my limited set of units with no chance to win? For whatever reason, I valued that betrayal pretty highly and felt like, because I had so much trust in him, and because it was so critical, and because he had, you know, told me he was going to do it. He told me he was going to tap Vienna. I definitely consider that to be something worth avenging, I guess. And not to say,
you disband Rome. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought, but finish it quickly.
Sure. Well, that's it. I mean, Turkey stabbed me too, but it didn't have all those characteristics that I sort of considered in Russia's moves towards me to his detriment.
Russia's basically, the way he explains this all is, he goes, I'm a logical player. I like options, and I'm always going to take the best option for me. So, and I think he played that way for the most part. Although he did say he should have finished off Austria here. He said it was his biggest mistake. And maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. I tend to think his biggest mistake was not covering Budapest in the last move, but fine. All right, so we get to, I talk about the disband. I guess you can cover Rome, but really this is just a finger to Austria that you're not interested in your home centers as much as you are about attacking Austria. Is this emotional, or is it like, I've got enough to cover Rome if I want to, I can self-bounce? What are you thinking?
Oh gosh, we can, as we get further down the rabbit hole, my prospects are less and less, and there's less strategy.
Yeah, there's not much more to go over. Yeah.
I mean, my options are few here. I guess if I'm looking back, a reason for this is because there's an English fleet in the Channel, an English fleet in mid-Atlantic, and I gotta think one of these days that Frenchman is gonna turn around and value his own home centers as highly as he seemed to value mine, which didn't come to pass. But again, if I got any chance at all, it's not going to be by keeping the same exact 3 units that I had in before the game began and kind of huddling up on my peninsula. If I have an army in the Balkans, then these other guys have a reason to talk to me, and maybe they'd rather see me grow than their competition grow. So it's kind of a Hail Mary, but I think, there's reason to do that, especially if I think France has got to turn around at some point.
All right, so let me skip ahead to this move in the fall of 1904. You know what? I've seen this move before. I've seen an Italian army go to Serbia before, only to die. But were you at this point like, what other option do I have? And of course, you lose Naples in this sort of series here. But tell me the thought process of going back to Serbia, not taking Trieste, which you could have done, and just all around explain.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like I succeed in taking Serbia, right?
You do.
Yeah. This move wasn't terrible. Now, I don't know what Vienna's going to do, obviously, so I couldn't have been assured of Trieste. And Austria and I at this point are just kind of taking pot shots at each other. Neither one of us thinks we have too much of a chance, even though obviously he gets back in the game. So couldn't be assured of Trieste. I think I could be assured of Serbia because I'm cutting the Trieste support. So I figure I've got to get to 4 to have a shot. I take Turkey's support, which he did provide. I just guessed wrong in a 50-50 with Rome and Naples. Had I not guessed wrong, I actually get a build here, and things might have turned out differently. Probably not, but I think this is a fine move, except I lost the 50-50 in my home centers.
The German move into Tyrol,
less and less interesting.
It does get. I'm sorry. And we're going to skip over a lot at this point, but the German move into Tyrolia, did you think it would help or hurt you at the time?
Definitely thought it would hurt. At this point, sadly, he and I aren't talking much at all. I think, just about every turn I'm sending some let's bury the hatchet and help each other message. And every time I'm greeted with
working with France,
some set of insults, and we just weren't getting along. So I viewed that as a hostile unit for sure.
All right, so nothing really. It's just a series of admirable defensive moves in my mind from here on out, where you never got on the same page with Austria. I want to take you to the fall of 1910, where you helped Turkey take Rome. You get eliminated. Not that it matters technically, because what does it matter? But you did prioritize helping Turkey over having one center left to survive through the game. Tell me about your thought process in the final part here. Was it a big race to choose a winner, and you were going to help Turkey? Explain.
Sure. And there's actually a little more to this one. As you see, Russia didn't cover Budapest. I think I had at least some part in that. So Turkey and I are talking a lot here. It's definitely my goal to put him over the top, more as a protest against France and Russia than anything else. And because it was kind of fun, it was something to do. So
you're relevant all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, say it again.
You're relevant now. You had a part to play.
Yeah, and so I had been actively helping Turkey for a few turns, but the plan here is I sent a message to Russia and France saying that it was, again, too long, took too many hours of my life to compose, but basically explaining why I wanted to throw the game to France and not Russia, and saying that I was going to support France to Naples to give him what I think would have been like a 10th center, and to push him over Russia. And the reason I did that was so that Russia would think he had to take Romania in order to win the race against France, because if he does that, then he's not going to cover Budapest. And so at this time, Russia at least thinks there's a possibility that Turkey is trying to help Russia. And I know that's what their communications were like. And Turkey was saying that's what he planned to do. And so if Russia thinks he has to gain another center because I'm going to let France end with both Naples and Rome, then the only way Russia can win is to take Romania. And I think that's why he left Budapest uncovered, and that's why he ultimately lost. So that was the plan.
He agrees. That's what he said.
Yeah. Good. So at least, I can say at the end of the game that, should you be playing a game with me at some point in the future and I ask you to tap Vienna for me, maybe, possibly I can enact some sort of revenge with a diabolical plot in 1910. So anyway, that was the plan, and I know it was a bit of a long shot to put Turkey over the top, but I think he had a chance, and that was the idea.
Okay, so Humble was very excited that I was interviewing you. You're a man of mystery. You're the James Bond of diplomacy. And he wanted me to ask you some questions, which I'm going to put on the board here.
These I'm telling you, he's a closeted fanboy. He has these burning questions he wants answered, but he's afraid to ask them himself. So this is true to form.
I'm going to put these questions up. Let's see if you ask. The first one I'm interested in. These are almost questions. First, compare season 2 and 4 with quality of opponents. Of course, Humble was in season 2 and he was Turkey, and I was England. So I assure you, you think I was a great opponent. But let's answer that question.
Sure. The quality all around was really strong, both finals. In season 2, I think of you, Humble, and Village Idiot as kind of, I'd say, a cut above in terms of
I'm surprised to hear
press,
that.
especially.
Quality of press, I'll take.
So I mean, I think y'all are very strong players. I think Pau is a strong player too, who won season 2. In season 2, there were a few powers that didn't have as much commitment, and I think there was even a substitute in Germany, and I think Russia was very inexperienced. So I think there were some bright spots, some really, really talented players in season 2, but kind of the overall level was brought down in a few ways. In season 4, I really didn't see a weak spot around the board. Everyone was very active, and I think knew what they were doing. So I'd say the overall quality was pretty similar. There were, I think, some weak spots in season 2 that we just didn't have in season 4. I thought everybody was a strong player and very committed.
Boo. Season 2 was the best. All right. Second question. You died from an Austrian-French attack twice. What have you learned? Not be Italy, I would say, is the first thing you learned.
Yeah, I haven't learned anything, to be totally clear. I mean, I wouldn't have played those differently. In the next final, when I draw Italy again and I face a Southern Hedgehog again, I'm sure we're going to see the same result. So Humble's leading the witness here and trying to get me to explain some revelation. I would have been happy to work with Austria here. The biggest problem was he didn't trust me, and he didn't trust me to the extent that he ordered his first unit to Venice to open the game. He wouldn't support me to Greece, and he threw a fit when I insisted upon covering Venice in the fall of 2001. I think one of the biggest things in diplomacy is sometimes you have to give trust to receive it. And I think sometimes if you show someone that you're willing to trust them a little bit, it can do wonders for kind of creating a longer term partnership. And especially in Italy-Austria relationship, I think Austria has to do that first. Not to say he always should, but that is what, I mean, obviously he turned things around, and so did Paua in season 2. But
all right.
That was
so question 3 you've already answered. Question 4 is more of the Frank Sinatra regrets. I've had a few. Do you have any regrets in this game, honestly, about how it went down?
Sure. I mean, it was a miserable, terrible game. I don't know. I mean, the biggest problem for me was France coming. I don't know how I could have changed that. So I wish I could have, but I don't think that's within my power to do.
Could you have gotten on with Austria at all, or would that have been a fool's bargain?
Yeah, I suppose I could have. So I could have taken his support to Bulgaria when he provided it and stabbed Turkey. I think that was probably in 1902. I don't know. It's still not a good game for me. I don't know. I don't have a lot of opportunities to grow beyond that. We don't have fleets to invade Turkey, and I still have this French problem. So, I mean, I look at the game as a disaster, but I don't have a plan for what I could have, a different move I could have made, or I have yet to conceive of a plan that would have won that game for me. Not to say a better player couldn't have, but I'm not sure I could have.
Maybe you should have sent more press to Russia to make sure he tapped Vienna.
Yeah, another couple dozen letters
try
and you
hard
might have
enough.
gotten the picture.
All right. Question 5. Actually, I'm going to rephrase this. Umbo's question is, do you think your style is only effective in the regular season? I will add a corollary to that. In the qualifying rounds, which has weaker opponents in general, except when you're playing me, my question is this. I think you have a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, and you are all over everybody. And do you ever feel like sometimes in the finals, maybe that leads to more suspicion than it does in a qualifying game? And you can tap that onto to Umbo's question of, he's implying here that you're good in the qualifying, but you can't seal the deal.
Sure. So to answer Umble's question directly, yes. I mean, I have been entirely ineffective in the finals and entirely effective in the qualifiers. So there's no doubt about sort of effectiveness. He's also kind of asking, looking towards the future, will this always be the case? Maybe. Your point about reaching across the board and trying to influence everybody comes into play. I think especially season 2, I think I was looked at with a lot of suspicion because I was particularly active across the board in that game. I was active across the board in this game too, but I don't think it hurt me so much. I mean, I think I had a good relationship with England. Germany didn't hate me because I was so active. It was more of I think a factor of the French relationships. So look, I don't know if I'm going to be, losing and getting eliminated in finals for the rest of my life. Definitely struggled in the last 2. I think I might do a little better as a different country just so I can refresh my mind and look at it from a different point of view. But I don't have much of a response to the critique that, man, you've sure done well in the qualifiers and then you've sucked in the finals, because it's definitely true.
Okay, so the last question here, Umble says, it's basically who's better, me or you? We've basically tied, but I would like to show Umble, who I know is listening, the rankings. That does not look like a tie to me, Flint.
I don't think anybody has any doubt that I'm better than Umble. I don't think Umble has any doubt. And I challenge him next time to come ask that question and defend himself rather than sending his lackey.
I'm the lackey? This is how you're going to end it? I'm the lackey? I'm going to go with Umble now. You turned me. I used to love you.
Did I stutter?
I think you went a little bit too far. A little bit. I said this is how our games go. I set you up for success with a softball, and you decide to throw to hit the pitch at my head. I'm going with Umble. He's retired. He's better. Sorry, Flint. Although I will say Umble says he's retired from online play. I hope you don't make that decision. Will you be playing in season 5? And if so, will you be changing your name again?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I wouldn't tell you if I did. But in any game anyone is playing where there is some obnoxious blowhard who can't stop sending you press and can't stop threatening to throw the game to Turkey, and it's an anonymous game, it's probably me.
Do you regret stabbing me the very first game we played? Do you feel a little guilty about that?
I feel like absolutely not. I feel like that has that was the seed from which this glorious plant
slave master relationship developed.
Whatever the rapport is that you and I have, I wouldn't trade it for the world, so I have no regrets.
No matter what you say about me, lackey or whatnot, you're still aces in my book, Flint. Sorry it didn't work out for you again. I did win the last longer bet in season 2. I didn't even make it to season 4 because, Well, for lots of reasons, not the least of which was a solo where you crushed me as Italy. But I love playing with you. I think Village Idiot is right in the sense that you want people to have a good time. I play diplomacy for fun. As I said, I'm already way ahead in life. I've got a woman, okay? Any woman. So that's everything else is gravy for me after that. Thank you for being a part of the Nexus community. Thank you for your candid interview. Pretty funny. I still think I came ahead of you on the humor meter, but not the tactical meter. And thanks to diplomacybriefing.com for sponsoring. Flint, Conk, whatever your name is, I'll give you the last word, my friend.
Hey, thanks so much for taking the time. I can't believe how much time and effort you and Humble have put in to doing these interviews, and they were great. Sorry I stopped listening when I was getting crushed. Thanks to Nexus and all the players. It was definitely a fun game, even though I kept losing centers. And I just apologize to everyone on behalf of Humble for his lack of courage to come here and try to defend himself against me. I think that speaks volumes.
It's okay. He sent his lackey instead. Have a good evening, and I hope to all the people who listen to this that you enjoyed it as much as I certainly enjoyed interviewing Conk, Flint, whatever the hell he is. Good night, Flint. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks.